Welcome. My name is Cindy Billington, and I've had the honor to serve as the chair for the University Staff Council for the year of 2021 and 22. Thank you for joining our forum today. The purpose for today's forum is to learn the status of our Path Forward initiative. We've had a lot going on this year. We have a long way to go, but we're getting there. We're grateful to have the leaders from those units being consolidated at A&M here with us today. Thank you. Before I get started, I want to share with you a quick update on what is happening with the University Staff Council. As you know, USC is a group of representatives from every unit under the office of the president of Texas A&M University. That actually includes several branch campuses, not here on the main campus in College Station. We're a very large group. In addition, we have several ex officio members from the Texas A&M system, Faculty Senate, TEAS, and many, many others. We work together as your advocates. A few areas where we've had a major difference this past year include your voice on the Path Forward initiative, the President's Council on Diversity and Climate, alternate work location discussions, and many, many more. One of our most impactful initiatives is the Staff Emergency Fund. We have been able to provide hundreds upon thousands of dollars in emergency relief to our fellow staff here at A&M. Selfless service. We do this through donations, which have been matched by the President's office. We are so grateful for every penny we receive. If you've ever given to this fund, thank you. If you have not, we welcome you to do so. We host fundraisers throughout the year, and we have one on August the 25th, partnering with Double Dave's from 5 to 9 p.m. at the 1410 Texas Avenue location in College Station. You must mention that you're there for the University Staff Council for us to get the credit for that. You should have received the save the date for that yesterday, so please read that message for further details. Take the night off from cooking and support this amazing resource for staff. It'll be the second day of student classes, so by the time you get home, you'll be exhausted from traffic, so take advantage. Now, to the reason we're here today. For the next hour and 25 minutes, we will hear from 6 of our leaders from A&M on the Path Forward initiative. At the end of our conversation, we will have time for questions and answers. Please put those questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Do not put it in the chat, but put it in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We will answer those. For those questions not answered, we will make sure that we get those to the appropriate person, get the answer you need, and we will be sharing those in bulk. It may take us a few weeks, but included with that, we will share the link of this webinar today. So those A&M leaders joining us today include, and if you would please just raise your hand, those of you on the panel, Greg Hartman, Senior Vice President, Chief Operations Officer. Damon Slayton, Vice President of Human Resources and Organizational Development. John Crawford, Vice President and Chief Financial Officer. Ed Pearson, Vice President of Information Technology and Chief Information Officer. Barbara Mendoza, Vice President for Marketing and Communications. And Stephen Franklin, Vice President for Facilities, Health, and Safety. Each will take about 5 to 7 minutes to provide updates on their respective areas. So the first speaker is Greg Hartman. After he finishes his part, we will let each speaker go ahead. That will give us more time at the end for questions, if that's okay with everyone. So, Mr. Hartman, would you like to begin?
Sorry, forgot to unmute there. So thank you, Cindy. Want to say thank you to you and all the members of the Staff Council for inviting us to do this and giving us this opportunity. Getting out and talking about this is something we've been wanting to do for a while. And I'll tell everyone, this is the first time we've done the presentation you're about to see for a large group. As you can imagine, the path forward has a lot of pieces to it, a lot of moving pieces, and you'll hear about a lot of them. Obviously, we can't put them all into this presentation. That's one of the challenges here, is figuring out what we can talk about, what we have time to talk about. But we'll each one of the leaders here will try to touch upon some of the biggest areas, most important areas, and try to talk about the areas where it may impact you, most likely impact you and the work that you do. So we'll try to do that. And of course, the most important thing here is the questions and answers at the end, as Cindy was talking about. So please ask all the questions you can, and we'll get to all of them. We'll be sure to work with the Staff Council to answer all those questions afterwards. So Sarah, if you can bring up the presentation, I'm going to go over some sort of high-level presentation, high-level slides first, talking about just talking about sort of why we did this and what the overall goals were. So here we go. So perfect. If you just go to the first slide, Sarah, or the next slide. So, you know, a lot of you heard about this. One more, go back one more. A lot of you heard about this when it came out. It was often referred to as the MGT report, because that was the consulting firm, the lead consulting firm that did this work. But it was really about Dr. Banks, when she first came into office, wanting to make sure we really thought about the administrative functions of the university, and we streamlined them and made them as efficient as possible, really making sure that the organization worked for the university, to make sure that teaching students, doing research, all those kind of things, we had the best situation possible. I know when Dr. Banks was first talking to me when she got selected, she said, I want to make sure there's a great administrative operational backbone so that the people doing the teaching and the researching, it's as easy as possible for them to be as effective as possible. Next slide, Sarah. So, you know, we went through this process to really look at all of our operations, try to understand what can we do to make it easier and more effective for our researchers, our teachers, our students, and our staff to do their job both efficiently and effectively, really making sure that we're meeting the mission and goals of Texas A&M. Next slide. So big picture, and you'll hear a lot about this when my 5 colleagues here walk through their presentation. One is to try to streamline overall. You know, there's been a lot of duplication over the years, and any organization over time kind of develops scar tissues and layers and things like that you have to every once in a while just kind of clean up and reorganize a little bit. So we found a lot of those through the process and identified ways that we think are going to make things more efficient. Trying to identify ways where we can do more service offerings, everything from the way that we help, you know, teachers, researchers, whoever meet their needs, or Damon's going to talk in HR about better career paths for the staff and talent management opportunities and those kind of things that we really think are going to enhance this as a place to work. And then just overall reducing the amount of bureaucratic headaches that you have. Again, a lot of that is just duplication, sometimes not being clear who's in charge, or maybe there's multiple people in charge of something, and those always cause problems. So we try to identify those and eliminate those where we can. Next slide. So here's what you should expect from us, and you should hold us accountable for this. And you'll hear this from my 5 colleagues. One, we need to be at reducing those administrative headaches that you have when you're working through tasks, ordering things, contracts, hiring someone, those kind of things. Hopefully, as we've begun to identify and we've done some reorganization, there's more clear responsibility and accountability for who's in charge of doing things. I mentioned in the human resources, there's a big priority for Dr. Banks was career path and talent management, and looking at succession planning, really making sure we're doing everything we can to help all of the staff throughout the organization maximize their opportunity to stay with Texas A&M for a long time and to really grow and have opportunities. We want to start to measure how well we're doing. Everybody needs to measure customer service, and are we really accomplishing a higher quality level of service to our customers throughout the organization. And then continuous improvement, which you hear about all the time, but you can talk about it, but if you don't set up a structure to make sure continuous improvement is a priority, it gets lost in the overall process. So we're going to build in things that constantly keep us thinking about that and continually improving. Next slide. So a couple things we have to do, and we thought about throughout this entire process. How do we use the existing talent we have and to improve our system. We've got a lot of great people in this organization. We got to make sure they have the right tools, and then we clean away any of those burdens to get things done. So much of this, when you hear the conversation going on here, is about collaboration. And I know the 5 leaders here, one of the things they've really been doing with their teams is that we've been spending a lot of time talking to each other to figure out how does a facilities move affect IT? How when we're going to hire a lot of people, do we know that we're talking with finance and that there's good collaboration and efficiency with those kind of things? And then holding people accountable. Among our operations folks that you're seeing the leadership here today, we got to be accountable not only to Dr. Banks, but to this organization that are really doing things better than we've done them in the past. Next slide. So what we've tried to stay consistent with, and this has been difficult at times, but we think we're doing a good job. And part of this effort here that we're starting with you guys today, and a lot of presentations we're going to be doing over the next month or two, is try to be as transparent as possible. We constantly talked about needing to share what we're doing and open, pull back the sheets and make sure everyone knows exactly what's going on. Try to keep things simple. Simple is often more hard than complex. And so it takes a lot of work to stay simple in our processes, but we think we're accomplishing that. Again, I mentioned this over and over again, but it's really important. Accountability. When you have people knowing that they're accountable to their bosses, to the rest of the organization, you get better performance. And again, collaboration, making sure we're talking to each other all the time. Sarah. So one thing I want to promise to everybody today too is that after about a year, as we're on this path forward journey here, we're going to do a report that shows how well did we do, what recommendations that we adopted got implemented, what worked well, what didn't work well, because often you learn as much from what didn't work well as what worked well. So we're going to go through that and have a public report that says, here's what worked well, here's where we still have work to do, and here's something that maybe was a bad idea, and then we're going to have to figure out a different way to do that. That's part of that transparency, making sure we report back to the community it's what's happening. And that process will have a committee or a task force, an advisory group, whatever, of faculty and staff who will work with the leadership, who go through and look at all the different tasks and elements of this report and provide feedback to make sure that everyone feels comfortable and confident that we're reporting back realistically what the successes were and where we still have work to do. Next slide. So what you're going to hear now is we're going to go through each area here, starting off with human resources, and we're going to talk about, the major things that are being done, what you can expect to have happen, and what some of the timeline pieces of this are. Again, we have to be fairly high level here. Your questions may dive deeper, and we're open to do those kind of things. But each one of these sections now is going to walk through quickly and talk about their area. Next slide. And then one last thing I just want to point out, each one of these, you'll see one of the first actions is to align personnel, finalize the organizational structure. So as you all know, in each case, we've had to redo the organization to some extent to, again, eliminate duplication, those kind of things. So you'll see that each time. That's a given in each one of these areas, but then each one of the leaders is going to dive down a little bit deeper as to what their priorities are. So first, I think next is Damon Slayton to talk about human resources.
Thank you, Greg. And as Greg mentioned, what our top priority or action item is to align the personnel in our structure. It was often a misnomer that folks thought centralization was meaning that each of our different areas would strip all of the individuals and personnel that were embedded throughout the departments and divisions to a centralized location. And that is not the case at all. And for me, aligning personnel means that we're franchising HR services. It's not unlike where you travel anywhere in the world and you see golden arches. You'll know that that's a McDonald's, and you'll affiliate that with a Big Mac, which is 2 all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun. And in doing that, we're building a structure that is meant to facilitate a higher level of HR services, built on the need to elevate the level of service quality from leadership to generalists to specialists in each of these embedded areas. A lot of how we're going to do that is utilize the HR liaison network that currently exists. However, it will look different because now the HR liaison network is comprised mainly of business coordinators that will soon be split between a finance operations group and a HR operations group. So within each of those business coordinators, they will then transition over to a HR related title specific to their HR training, development, and will be responsible for delivering extraordinary HR services to you. In doing that, we can focus on streamlining processes, relegating the appropriate delegations of authority, and ensuring that we're reducing bureaucracy by leveraging technology and utilizing highly skilled, trained, and passionate people to ensure that we're delivering services that you would come to expect as the employer of choice. And then two of our initiatives that we're working on to change will be centralizing our onboarding. Some of you may, as a new employee, suffer the consequences of a disproportionate effort to get your benefits on timely, to get payroll adjusted correctly, and then also to make sure that you're completely through the workday process prior to day one. So we want to make sure that as of day one, you are mission ready to go and accomplish the things that are slated for you as an employee of a particular division or unit. And the other thing that we're working on, Greg alluded to, was how are we structuring a method whereby we can advance and retain our employees. A lot of that is done through a succession planning model that may have existed previously in disproportionate units across campus, but President Banks is really passionate about having a uniform, centralized method whereby folks can be identified as the leaders of the future, but also leverage our talent management pools, build career paths that are maybe even more technically proficient, so that we're technically proficient and building leaders for tomorrow. Okay, Sarah, next slide. Some of our anticipated outcomes, obviously we like to think that we will have readily available resources throughout the entire university community. That includes Cutter, Galveston, Rio Grande Valley, all points in between, and College Station, so that individuals will not just be a ticket that we will respond to. Individuals have names and needs, and we value those employees. We want to ensure that we can facilitate services to provide the utmost of customer service for each of you. And then the more efficient hiring and onboarding processes. What that means to me is that we may currently just have a recruiting process where we post a position and we hope the best person comes along. We want to offer services whereby we can be more of a talent acquisition resource for any of our leadership and our departments and our divisions, so that we can find talent that meets the expectations, the values, and the culture of what Texas A&M is, and would value being a member of the preeminent employer across the United States. And then obviously the dedicated employee success programs. Not only is it about succession planning, but it's having talent management that has career paths, that is relevant to salary surveys that are up to date. So where are we within our market? Where are they where we can recruit and retain the best and the brightest? What are some of the employee recognition programs that we can foster and facilitate to ensure that we're engaging our personnel and helping them to retain the highest quality members of their teams? And then last, the performance management. How can we develop a system that is more relevant to feedback and to a more personal level of what is relevant to today's time, and then how we can mentor individuals and coach them to be successful in their careers? Okay, Sarah. In our timeline, just to point out a few things, what I think is important but that we've been working on this summer, we will continue to work on our service catalog. And it's not just me and HR working on service catalog, it's each of us around this table working on our individual service catalogs. Not just so that we can ensure that we're delivering services that are germane to our disciplinary area, but also so that any duties that may have not been addressed, that may need to be addressed at a more administrative level, that those orphan duties are also addressed and that personnel are relegated to ensure that those types of services continue to be offered and addressed at the department level. As we roll into the next fiscal year, we have an industry standard of ensuring that to be an effective HR office, for every 150 employees, meaning faculty, staff, graduate assistants, and students, researchers, there is one dedicated HR generalist or specialist. Currently, we're at about 250 to 1, sometimes 300 to 1, depends on where we're at. But we believe that as we're getting closer and closer to filling vacancies that have been vacant often since the beginning of the pandemic, that we can facilitate generalists, specialists, and higher levels of responsiveness in meeting that objective. And then later, as we go into the winter, we want to truly trained to the new standards and focus on customer service and efficiency so that what may have been a disproportionate and decentralized units where even within departments, things were done differently, we can train to a standard that will help with our continuous improvement efforts and ensure that wherever you are on campus, that you'll receive extraordinary customer service and it will be done effectively and efficiently. We're excited about what the HR services will gain by the path forward. We're excited to work with you in each of your departments and divisions. We've begun to reach out to many of our leadership deans, vice presidents, and managers to ensure that there's a smooth transition so that we don't just flip a switch and things are left awry as of September 1, but there'll be a smooth transition and we are continuing to be engaged to provide extraordinary customer service. Okay, thank you, Sarah. And with that, I'll turn it over to John Crawford.
All right, thank you, Damon. My name is John Crawford. I'm the Vice President for Finance and Chief Financial Officer, and I appreciate all of you being here with us and giving us the opportunity to talk about what all's been going on over the last 6 to 9 months since the Path Forward report came out. For finance, there's been a pretty big impact when you start talking about the centralization, because basically what that means is we're adding probably 250 to 300 new employees to the division. And these are folks that are located all over campus. You know, there have been I think some confusion at first about what centralization actually meant. You know, these folks that have been the business and finance staff for colleges and departments across campus, they're going to stay embedded within each of your units and continue to provide that service to you. You know, they'll continue to do the same services they have. We hope over time that we will be able to provide them a better toolkit to do that from. You know, the big difference though is the reporting line. They'll report up through finance, but day to day, they're still out there supporting that individual unit that they always have. So they're still part of that college or department team. One of the areas that we looked at coming out of the Path Forward, and Greg and Damon both have mentioned this, and that's process improvement. And specifically on the finance side, we had a working group that was put together to work on creating a framework to manage financial process improvement projects. The results of that committee, I mentioned the framework, but we're also putting together a governance committee that will basically oversee that process. It's not a process that lasts a year, 2 years. It's something that will be in place for a long time. And as ideas come up across campus, we want folks out across campus. If there's something, a frustration with finance, whatever that you've experienced, we want to know about that. And we want to be able to take that, look at it, see if there's a better way to address it and, you know, make it a more efficient process. You know, they'll receive those ideas, they'll vet them, and then this governance committee will then prioritize the things that we'll work on. Part of this working group's output was really, we had 2 big items that kind of came to the forefront as we talked about processes that we needed to work on and needed to be addressed. And we're going to go ahead and start working on those probably here early this fall. The first one deals with delegated purchases. Many of you may know we have a delegated purchasing authority of $10,000. And so what that means is anything over $10,000 has to go out for bid. It's a time-consuming process. There's a lot of, as we say, bureaucracy that we've got to work through to get that done. But it's part of the state law. We've got to do that. But we do have a little bit of flexibility with that $10,000 number. We've had that number's been in place for probably 10 or 15 years. I think we're at a point in time where we need to look at that. It may make sense for us to raise that. You know, we have something that 10 years ago cost $7,500. Now it's probably $10,500. So used to, we didn't have to bid it. Now we do. That requires a lot of extra effort from our finance staff and folks all across campus that are involved in the procurement of that item. So that's one of the things. We think we can become more efficient there by looking at that delegated purchasing authority. The second item is our contract negotiation process. We understand it takes a long time to process and get a contract reviewed and signed off. We want to go into that process, look at areas where we may have bottlenecks, identify ways that we can become more timely in getting those things processed through, and ultimately reduce the amount of time it takes to get a contract signed. You know, there's a lot of things. You look at that flow chart on a contract negotiation, and there's a lot of decision points there. So next slide, please. So let's talk about the outcomes. I mentioned earlier an improved toolkit for finance staff. And when I say that, I really look at it, there's a couple of things. I think there are enhanced financial reports that we will work on getting in the hands of our assistant deans and finance staff across campus to use to help manage their college or department much more efficiently. We talked about the process improvement project that's going on. I think standardization of our financial processes, that's another area. We've got a lot of people that do things very well. We need to be able to share how we do that across our entire business team and adopt those best practices across all of campus. I think it's very important that we get a better process for training, and it goes back, Damon talked a little bit about onboarding, and you know, that's kind of where it begins. When we first bring a finance person on campus, you know, we've got to make sure they are trained up. They start with a basic set of knowledge, and then from there we build on that and have a good professional development plan for them, so it becomes a true career here at A&M. And then the last thing, and this kind of goes back to the standardization, but establishing some user groups based on subject matter. You know, if you're a Aggie buy person and your primary responsibility is processing Aggie buy items, you would be part of a Aggie buy user group. And in that place, you would talk about best practice, share ideas, have potentially a listserv that you utilize to communicate with others across campus. And then that helps us establish those standards across campus and how we do things. So next slide. So in terms of a timeline, we talked again about the process improvement items, but there's two that I'd like to highlight here in this list. Later as we get into the fall, one of the things we're going to be working with our vice presidents, our deans, and our finance leadership across campus to implement a financial review process for the campus. That is something that is needed, and we think that'll help facilitate, help keep needs, you know, the leadership team well aware of what financial needs are out there across campus, and it'll help with that communication as we get into budget time. The second thing that I wanted to talk about is putting together a committee to develop a performance-based budget model. Now, when I say this, I am not talking about an RCM budget or a responsibility-centered management budget model. What I'm talking about is basically an allocation methodology that we use specific performance metrics to allocate funds across campus. We are just now starting to get into this. This is something that'll be a time-consuming process, but we will, as we work through this, we will provide updates to the campus community as we move through it. So that concludes my remarks. I'm excited about bringing on this new group of finance folks to the division. And the biggest thing is we need to maintain that level of service that we've had, and then identify areas where we can even take it to that next level and provide additional efficiencies and better services to our campus community. So that concludes my remarks, and at this time, I'll hand it over to
Next slide, Sarah.
yeah, to Marcom, to Barbara. Thank you.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Barbara Mendoza. I'm the Senior Associate Vice President of Marketing and Communications. Thanks very much for the opportunity to speak with you today. Just as the other units are working on, we're aligning our structure, and we're currently in the process of fine-tuning that. And the reason is we all work together and support one another. It's essential to make sure that Marcom is set up in such a way that supports every unit across the university. It's an important part of that to lead into ensuring that our team is set up to operate as strategic partners. In many respects, Marcom staff have operated in such a way that it's more of a responsive resource, and that will need to be maintained. But we'd also like to flip that to responsive and reactive, but to be strategic and assisting with decision making as it relates to marketing and communications, keeping that in mind. That's also essential as we focus on staff development. That in that area, we will invest in our in staff growth on a number of fronts. So from training and professional development. And from that, we not only expect the product to be enhanced to promote the university, but also for retention across our own staff who are focused on specific areas as they grow in their career. Additionally, you'll see two areas. Oh, sure. Hi. Just make sure you can hear me. Sorry. Two areas there, 4 and 5, the editorial process, media relations, and the website consistency and support. So in we have many areas of Marcom that you may be familiar with. With those, we have these two major priorities, and I just want to take a moment to explain why they are such priorities. The editorial process, anyone working in marketing and communications knows that without quality content, we can't do our jobs best. So we want to make sure that we're communicating effectively what we're communicating and ensuring that's meeting the goals of the university. But we also must consider a variety of audiences that go into our content. So ensuring accuracy, that means, are we following our editorial style guide, but also what we're saying. And I'll give you an example. For example, if we're creating content that might be in front of legislators, that in part of the process, we want to bring in our government relations colleagues to ensure they're part of it and review what we're putting out to ensure it meets information that they're aware of, and we can enhance that content. Additionally, with website consistency and support, it's a major area. As you all know, we have many websites, and across the university, that's really a first impression and the front door, the digital front door to Texas A&M. So we want to make sure that we are consistent, not only from a user standpoint, that they're able to interact with Texas A&M effectively, but also from our own staff to streamline that process so they're able to support the web needs efficiently. We also have to consider federal and state laws regarding accessibility. Therefore, that's a must that we have to streamline this critical area of the Marcom function. You can go to the next slide, please. One back. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Our goal as we align as an organization is to really get to the phrase that you see up top, one university, one brand, one team. That is really at the essence what, as we all work together, and then as a new division of Marcom as we work together. What it's not saying is that uniqueness and personalities of various units across campus go away. Really, it's elevating them to ensure consistency throughout our organization. And it's opportunity we have as marketing and communications professionals to elevate the university. Staff, it's been brought up, the misperceptions about how we will operate. Staff will remain embedded in units because we believe that's really the only way we can be effective in our communication. It's through the day-to-day activities that you are working with and alongside people who you are communicating for. But you also have the best of both worlds, where you are now connected to like professionals across the university for mentoring, leadership, guidance in your area of expertise. Can move to the next slide, please. There are a number of actions we're taking to implement our new structure. And while there are also many more that aren't listed here, I want to focus on just a few, one of which is the brand hub. I bring this up because it affects all employees, and it's really a resource for all employees, whether you are an employee of marketing and communications or you are any other staff member. So what does it mean when I say brand hub? It can be defined in many ways. Brand, if familiar with the word, a lot of people will associate it with logos. Sure, it is logos, but there's a lot more to it with other assets like photos, videos, templates, but those are the tangible. Then we have the intangible with strategy and the perception of the university, meaning the brand. So we'll build an online portal. It's a resource that stores all of our brand assets. It's kind of think of it as your first stop to working with marketing and communications. And it will be built so you understand when and how to elevate work so we can best support you. It'll also be a fantastic resource for our marketing and communications staff to have a central place across the university to access various needs that they have to build our communications. Next, as we move to the implementation phase, the really important step will be to develop a Division of Marcom manual that includes policies and procedures. And in the implementation of this, when I speak of this, I immediately think of my own experiences when joining Texas A&M years ago, and being in a role where you don't report to someone in communications, and your colleagues are not in communications either. Therefore, you're left on your own to find resources and hope that you're interpreting them correctly to communicate properly about the university and the unit you're embedded. The intention behind this is to alleviate that, not only save time, but it brings back us to the consistency across the university. And then as we further refine look into, of course, a major priority is developing career paths for our staff, and also communicating our progress, not only with our staff, but with university leadership. We want to create a mechanism to communicate updates, successes, improvements, and have a way to keep a conversation open. We're certainly committed to continuous improvement, and we want to make sure that we are serving the needs best of the university and, of course, our staff. It's really, although you see a lot of change throughout this, that we understand that, we know it is a lot of change, and there are some obstacles ahead. However, we really see this as a twofold, a win-win in many ways, that staff will have the opportunity to interact with their own peers, grow in their careers, but also with that be the best marketing and communications division that we can be through the support of one another. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Ed Pearson. I wanted to give you a little bit of background on what we're doing as part of this. And as you've seen, there's some real tight integrations between the different groups. And that's part of what gets IT so excited about this process. Historically, if we found a new tool or a new piece of technology, we had to bring it to 15 different groups to try to get it in use. With the new structure, we get to go to a finance group. We get to go to a Marcom group and be able to deliver and provide that technology without having to go through the hurdles that were there. And so it's very exciting from our point of view. When we started going through the process, we really broke it down into an internal view of things that we wanted to do from an IT point of view primarily around implementing the vision that the president has established, to be able to say we want to build careers, not just jobs. And so building that career for our staff, it may be a technical career path, it may be a management career path, but it ought to be something that gets them excited about being here. And so we looked internal, we worked a lot with Damon and his folks on building out those career paths, identifying how to recruit skill sets we need from within. Everything we post is posted internal first, and then if we have to, we go external, because we've got tremendous skill sets in-house. We just have to figure out how to take a better advantage of them. The second part of what we did was look to our customers and to be able to come back and say, what can we do long-term and what can we do short-term to help our customers? And when you start going through that part of the list, it revolves around 2 or 3 key items. How do we get help and help desk type functions to be more appropriate to the individual seeking those services? Sometimes in an IT organization, you get a one-size-fits-all help desk, whether you're a student or a staff member or a faculty or a researcher. We're going to optimize that because we're going to have one help desk environment, not 15. And so being able to have come in and get tailored help for you based on your role, because in many of your cases, one day you're an instructor, the next day you're a researcher, or you're a staff member trying to get something done here. That help needs to be tailored to that. And so that was one of the key things that we took back out of the working groups that everybody was giving us feedback on. Another one was around purchasing. It is very similar to hand-to-hand combat sometimes. Supply chains have made that even harder to live with. You'll place an order today and get it in a week. You place an order next week and get it in 6 weeks. That's hard to run a business that way. And so part of what we're going to do is we're going to build out our abilities to streamline that so that we can come back and give you an SLA, a service level agreement on purchasing. Same concept applies to managing computers. When everybody was in their own IT group, some of the groups had great knowledge of how to support Macs. Others struggled to support Macs because their staff hadn't been trained properly, or they just didn't have very many of them. We need consistency so that our customers that use the Mac or that use PCs or Linux workstations or whatever, get, again, that customized level of support to be able to help them get their job done. And for them not to have to be an IT specialist and be someone who works in finance or HR or wherever. So getting that management platform in place. The other, and not by any stretch of the imagination, the largest part of what we're trying to do dwells around the network on campus. This, many parts of campus, it's a 20-year-old system, and it looks and acts most days like a 20-year-old system. And so we're going through, again, a phased approach to this. We've identified where we can make the most impact the fastest. And that's what we're going to focus on while we build the overall infrastructure to be able to deliver the kind of network that we need today, not the kind of network we needed in 2002. And that really is, every one of you have experienced that. That's a huge change, right? It was a wired network back then. For the most part, it's a wireless network now. So one of the first areas inside of the network that we're going to focus on is the ability to enhance our wireless connectivity within the buildings and around campus. Next slide, please. So part of this is we've got to be able to build out our systems so that it's easier to ask for help and easier to deliver help. The Aggie network that I talked about, the ability to provide good connectivity. I laughed when we were talking with a bunch of students about what do they want the next generation Aggie network to have, and they said, what we really want is great coverage around the hammocks. I got to admit, I had to go look to see where all the hammocks were being strung up, but we will get coverage in and around the hammocks as part of this. So being able to meet the needs of our customer, meet the security needs. Every one of us has seen a continuous push around the area of security, both in your personal lives and your professional lives. And so we've got to be able to blend that security focus with the focus on the customer and be able to do both. And then, as I said, streamlining our purchasing process so that we can be predictable in what the outcome looks like, and we can be consistent in the quality of the product that we deliver. Next. So like most of the folks, we've got a series of timelines we're looking at. I'm going to focus on the network side of this because it's a good example of how we're doing all of these. One is to identify where the easiest and best points of impact are. How do we make the biggest impact in your lives and in your work? How do we get that going? And then there's always phase 2, phase 3, phase 4 as we get more capabilities into the system. But we recently ordered 4,000 new access points to be able to enhance our Wi-Fi coverage in buildings and out of buildings. It's things like that that will make a difference as we move forward. And then there's some new technology that finally becomes available to us once we get the new network in place. And so as we look out past May of next year, that's part of that next push with this is how do we, now that we've got the technology in place, how do we take advantage of it to make your lives easier? I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay, Stephen Franklin, the Vice President of Facilities, EH&S, UES, but primarily we're focused on facilities for this discussion today. And as a precursor before I go into the proposed actions, the essence of this, looking into the university and facilities was this decentralized model that was not providing advocacy to each and every group. And that's the ultimate goal of where we're going with facilities, is that we get a uniform representation and service across the university. And that's why you see the action plans that we have as facilities management. Action 3, the maintenance quest, that's really a sub of action 2. And in campus planning, construction, mapping, analytics, those were the elements that we're seeing that were crucial on campus to move us forward with better service, better efficiency, save money, and get us all on one plan. Gets things into the master plan of the president, and gets the departments and everyone aligned to that mission. Next slide, please. So when we start looking at the increase in quality of facilities repair, that's going to be us putting out a robust facilities management group. That was one thing that was felt there was not enough representation across campus that could support the campus in a single fashion with transparency and ease and efficiency. And so that is going to go from on staff of somewhere from 6 to 8 to somewhere around 85 to 90 on campus that are designated just to provide support across this campus, ease in work orders, ease and different submitting those. Like Ed was saying, we're working with his group to put in a common one system that applies all work orders that we control, not UES, not SSC, that we have control over. The professional support, planning and design construction, that is the division that's going to really be the process that replaces what was the CBE. This is a group of professional architects, engineers, and construction managers that are going to sit with the leadership of the university, the departments, go from cradle to grave on a project. Once it's there, they will run the day-to-day of those projects. So all the people out there that was doing that work and having to do on top of their jobs, they will take that load off of those people, and then they'll be able to look back into their department and be owner advocates for their department. And then the robust space data and mapping, that's really a fancy words for space inventory, right? So we're going to move forward, and for the first time since the creation of the university, we're going to have a enterprise data system called Archibus, where we're going to maintain information. We're going to do it not on a yearly basis, but on a daily basis, and we're actually going to provide input or where the clients can reach into it and log in and pull information. It's not siloed, it's not ours, it's everybody's. And then the mapping, which mapping is scattered all over the place, we're pulling that together as well. And actually we made good progress on that. We already have maps that we can show every level on campus, from fiber to sewer pipes to steam pipes, and it helps us plan. So we're already making progress there and look to make a lot more progress. Next slide, please. So what I'd like to focus on when we prepare is that what we're looking for in September is a facilities coordinator assignment for, it's not each building, we're going to have zones, and a person may have a couple of buildings here or there, but it's that dedicated resource that supports no matter who's in the building. You could have 5 departments, you could have visitors coming in. They are, we all like to call them, they're boots on the ground. They're going to be there to serve whoever walks in that building. They're also a liaison into the police department. They're a liaison into EH&S. Just imagine the freeze. If we'd have had that kind of representation on campus, we could have dialed up every building. We walked them as we needed to. So that's the kind of service and responsiveness that we're looking for by moving what was a proctor now to a professional level facilities person, and they'll be our facilities coordinators. So as we implement it, the implementation, I'd like to focus on, the construction planning and design group, we're going to create updated guidelines and standards, which is going to help to make sure we're all building the same way, creating the same types of space, which is going to be more efficient, quicker. It's going to save us money that we can roll back into our programs. And then our big outcomes that we're looking for: efficient service, constant quality for all facilities. And I said that earlier, is that advocacy, because when I was working in engineering prior to this position, I looked out across the university and people were not getting the same service as we were getting, and that wasn't right. So we're going to solve that problem. And then we're going to make the process of request simple. And we're going to stay on top of SSC, and we're going to get it done. So I know all the people that are working on it now are excited about it. Even SSC is excited about it, surprisingly enough. So I'm actually excited about it because we're going to save some money for the university and be able to respond quickly. You like that, John?
I do. I do.
So that's what I have for today.
All right, next slide, Sarah. This is Greg Hartman. I'm going to come back around. First, before I do this, let me just say thanks to all of you who are sticking with us here. I've seen on the number of participants, we haven't lost too many folks. So I want to thank my colleagues for going quickly, and thank you all for sticking with us, and we'll get to questions here in just a second. Just a couple of things. We've really focused on operations here as we've gone through this. And I think, from a staff perspective, that made a lot of sense, but obviously there are some other really important areas that Path Forward talked about. We've obviously created a College of Arts and Sciences. We have an interim dean there. We have the new School of Performance, Visualization, and Fine Arts, which also has an interim dean who's doing some really interesting work. We've adjusted the libraries. There's going to be investments going into the libraries very soon that I think is going to really help across campus. Creating a journalism school that's really going to be something I think that we've needed for a long time here, building that up. A lot of investment in the Bush School, both in terms of faculty, facilities, growth of programs, those kind of things. And then heavy investment in student health. The student health program is now located under the Health Science Center, but much more importantly, not only investments in student health, but especially in mental health services. And we'll talk some more about that. But Dr. Banks has a real passion for investing significantly in mental health. And just at the student level of mental health services, I think we've increased it 50% or more of the budget towards mental health services. So really significant new services that we'll be rolling out here in the new semester. Next slide, Sarah. So just what's next, and we'll go to questions after this. So we'll keep doing these kind of presentations across campus to different groups. If you have any subgroups that you want us to have a presentation, perhaps a much shorter presentation, but whatever makes the most sense, we're happy to do that. We're going to begin to continue to implement. If you've been to the Path Forward website, if you go to the main TAMU website, you can go to President Banks' page, or you can just even put in Path Forward, you'll find that website. All this work that you've seen here, all the different implementation memos, organization charts, all those kind of things are being posted there, and we'll continue to put more and more detailed information on that website all the time. So if you go there now and you don't have what you see, it'll be there soon, or you can ask for it and we'll make sure it gets there soon. Mark your calendar, September 28th, President Banks is going to do her State of the University address, which will really be the next phase of all this. A lot of what we've done here is to build that stronger foundation to make a greater university. She'll begin to talk there about a lot of her vision, strategic directives, major new investments, big growth, areas of growth, those kind of things. That's going to be a really significant speech that day. And then she is going to go around after that speech to basically every college, just about every department on campus, and go do, smaller meetings with folks to talk about her vision and her strategy for going forward. I talked about the one-year assessment. You'll be hearing more about that as we begin to roll that out. Later in the year, we put together a committee to work on that. And that's what I mentioned at the very end there, a committee of faculty and staff to be a part of that one-year assessment project as we go forward. Sarah, next slide. And that's it. So Sarah or Cindy, I'm not sure who's going to manage the questions, but hopefully we got at least about a half hour or so to answer as many questions as possible. So thank you all again for putting up with all that and listening to us all. And we're looking forward to the questions.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. I love the way that camera goes back and we can see everyone. So yes, we have a number of questions, and I certainly want to remind everyone that we are recording this. We will be sharing it with you, as well as the answers to all of the questions and the questions we do not get to. So we have a number of questions. So let's go ahead and start with question number 1. Once the operational units are centralized, what is being done to address the administrative, aka orphaned duties, once performed by the now centralized teams?
Let me give a high level answer to that. And then maybe David, you can take a little bit of that, and the other leaders may want to talk about that some too. So we recognized as we make these changes, this term orphan duties, that we've had to be very careful about and identify those. We've hopefully been able to minimize those, and most of the services that we talked about have been moved in to an area where they're more appropriately handled, whether it's finance, IT, HR, or whatever. We recognize we may still have some of those as we go through this process, and we're going to need to continually tweak that and make sure we don't let anything fall through the cracks. So let me turn to Damon, who I know has been working a lot on this, and a lot of this has to do with some of the HR areas as well too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Greg. And we collectively as a group meet regularly, and it's at the forefront of our processes and our thoughts, just so that we ensure that we're not just focusing on what's germane to our particular discipline, but also ensuring that each of us having experience with a centralized effort in previous roles, that how important it is to make sure that before we hand something off, we can't assume that someone is going to be the recipient of that. So I mentioned that service catalogs are something that we're all working towards. Even beyond the service catalogs, we're working with each administrative unit to ensure that there may have been some things that are on the bubble that may be great, but before we fully transition or solicit for a different type of role or an access, we're ensuring that the individuals that may remain that are not centralized at least can address that and be proficient in those duties moving forward. And it may not be September 1. It could be throughout the fall as we continue to find these things. The last thing we want to do is just flip a switch and things be a great disadvantage.
Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, and Cindy, I'd say on the finance side, I know one of the things we've been saying, especially as we work through the split out of finance and HR responsibilities, but then there's other administrative tasks. If we have a finance person, they're going to be centralized. If there are things they were doing and they don't know who is taking over that role or responsibility, they need to keep doing that until that point that we've found somebody to hand that off to. And, you know, we've really tried to work through that when we work through pulling back the centralized budgets and things like that to make sure that funding was left to cover some of those things. So, you know, if there are specific problems, you know, I would suggest we, you know, talk to your assistant deans or your AVP for finance to make sure they're aware that maybe there's something that hasn't been covered.
Thank you. Thank you. That's helpful. Okay. So who do we call when we have an IT, HR, facilities, etc. question or need help with an issue?
Let me take that quick for facilities. For facilities, each building will have dedicated signage throughout that facility pointing you to the person that's in charge of that facility via email, via cell phone, and we'll have a structure even on web pages to point you to the right person to call, and you'll have a hierarchical scale there. If it's a different issue, you'll have a different number or person to contact.
So this is Ed. Let me take a shot at that as well, if I can. This is part of that message that we're working to make sure everybody understands. We're not moving people out, right? So if you went to room 206 to get IT help before, you're going to go to room 206 to get IT help now, right? So the resources are still in their location. They're not being, there's no mythical building to pull them into in the middle of campus that can hold everybody. So they're staying embedded with our customers. So it should be pretty much similar. Now, over time, we hope to enhance the ability to get you to the right level of service faster. But initially, you're going to the same points for service that you've been going to.
Mm-hmm.
In Marcom, it'll be just like IT, where you will go to your familiar person or a location where you've received help from Marcom in the past. That will not change, and much like Ed mentioned, perhaps over time that will shift, but it won't be a sudden shift. Really, the biggest difference is, yes, you go to the same person, but behind them, when you might not see them, there's support there from other individuals who will certainly help and provide additional support as we refine our structure.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, here's the big one. Damon, are you ready for it? What is the status of the alternate work location policy?
I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, also known as remote work, right? Right.
Yes.
Yeah, we're fortunate to have made a lot of headway this summer. There was the leadership thought it was very important to rely on consultants to help us review our existing procedure, our approval process. We've worked with that team a lot over the last several weeks. We have provided various revisions amongst the task force that was formed that included system membership and included university membership. to really look at what was important based on what the recommendations were from this consultant. 3 things come to mind that they wanted us to really focus on, and that's defining eligibility. What type of job, what type of role, what type of level of responsibility is germane to a remote or different type of work, alternate work arrangement. Also, not just lump it all in together as alternate work location, but we also needed to define, is there a hybrid model? Is there a remote 100% model? And we've done that. We have proposed that there will be jobs that will be eligible for 100% remote. That their position descriptions will eventually, for recruitment purposes, as well as retention purposes, be conspicuously displayed such that they are eligible for remote and what we're going to call flex work. Flex work means that a person's role will require them to be on campus for some capacity of their role, but also at various times throughout the month, they may be at a remote location. So that was one of the main keys that we feel like we've enhanced and are ready to move forward on implementing. Second thing that they want us to do is simplify the process. The approval form was 6 pages. It had checklists and probably required a blood test and all kinds of different things for you to be approved. But the third element to help simplify that process was it needs to be trust-based. We're putting the effort on management in each department to ensure what's best for how they deliver services, with a mindset that we cannot lose the aspect that we are stewards of state funds, also responsible to the legislature and the chancellor to ensure that we're serving our customers to the best and fullest of our capacity. With that mindset, trusting employees to be responsible, to also look to the fact that they can be effective and efficient no matter where they are, but it's going to depend on the type of job that they do. So the last thing that was important that we do is clarify what the performance expectations may be. What boundaries are there within a workday? If we're trying to serve individuals in Qatar, can we start our workday at 6 a.m.? Does that mean we have to come to the office, or can we do that remotely? What are some of the tools and resources from an IT perspective or a financial perspective? What does it mean? Am I eligible to be reimbursed or not? We've comprised all of those elements. We're hoping to launch a web-based guide here within the next several weeks, so that it's a clear-cut, concise means whereby individuals can have a resource to develop and identify individuals and roles and titles that are eligible for alternate work location, which of those can be remote, which of those would need to be a flex work schedule. But then more importantly, how can we equip managers to be consistent in how they're looking at process across a broader perspective within their department? So we're going to be working with deans and vice presidents to set that guidepost to understand what consistency looks like. There will be training available through LinkedIn Learning that will help managers and employees to advocate for an efficient, effective process for alternate work location. We're going to push this communication out within the next couple of weeks to the higher level administrators, such that they can begin to have those conversations internally within their departments and divisions. Then by September 1 or early September, we'll have folks advocating for what this new approval process looks like. Honestly, as of today, we may even be able to use Workday. That is a readily available resource to us already to advocate for a request and approval process. But then by the middle of the fall or early in January, have a fully launched program to where folks can access resources that are germane to the tools and resources that they may need, as well as the training. So we've received support throughout the highest levels of our organization, such that we can advocate for what works best for our departments and divisions and our employees, not only from a work-life balance, but also to advocate and sustain a high level of customer service and productivity. So that's an update to where we are. Things are looking really good. I'm glad we're at a point where we can finally decide that we are at a point of reflecting on what would be important for us to recruit and retain employees, but then also looked at how this will serve to save funds eventually. What does that look like from a financial perspective, where we can leverage space and advocate for a more efficient and effective operation throughout.
And Cindy, if I could just add one real quick thing, just so everyone knows, we ran this by the chancellor and the regents last week. There was a board of regents meeting. They signed off on it, liked the policy. And again, I just want to reinforce something Damon and his team did, which was really some great work. But there's sort of an assumption now that if you're in a job that can allow for you to have remote work, we're going to move in that direction. Now there's specifics and you've got to make sure you go through the process and everything too, but it's not an exception. It is almost recognized. If your job is identified or defined as one of these jobs, you have that right to request it, go through the process. And the default position will be that you're going to be able to do that if you're able to work with your supervisor.
Okay. So my next question is, we heard that there are career paths for the centralized operational units. What about other staff positions?
Yeah, another great question. And I can say that one of the things that we've done internally in our human resources and organization effectiveness team is put a lot of emphasis on our classification and compensation group, such that we can advocate. We've done some work with the IT group already. Their ITAC group said that the titles that we have currently aren't relevant to today's time. So we work with them and their team to say, okay, let's build an infrastructure where we can recruit, retain, we can train people up and use them right out of their bachelor's degree, or even elevate them depending on their roles and levels of experience. The same would be for administrative staff. How can we be relevant in today's terms as far as what's a customer service role as opposed to administrative coordinator and these administrative program project roles? Each of these different things, we're looking at advocating for what is a more relevant time. The pay plan currently, the current pay plan has not been reviewed since 2016. Now is a grand time for us to work back through the system pay plan committee, as well as advocating through forums like the Staff Council and other specific groups, to then say not only what are titles that are appropriate, but then let's compare those to salary surveys that are relevant to where we can see how competitive we are within the current salary structures in this new day and time, to where folks are working from College Station for employers all across the world. But we want to recruit and retain the best here to be this employer of choice. And so to do that, we need to ensure that it's not just these 5 centralized units that we're looking at to identify new career paths. It's those individuals that are important to the daily activities in instruction and in research and in student support, that we can ensure that we have the right titles, that we are relevant to the current job market, and that we have the people in staff here to look at that all the time, where it's not just once every 6 years. We want to be relevant every quarter. Where are we within the job market? And then work to see what we can do to advocate for the salaries that would be appropriate to not only attract, but also retain the best and the brightest, as I said previously.
I apologize. Okay, the next question is there anything being done for employees to address the cost of living increase and minimal merit proposals?
I think one thing we have to recognize is that our budget comes from the legislature. So we have a legislative session coming up, and we'll have to see what decisions are made by the legislature. Hopefully it seems like it's a pretty good year for the state, and hopefully that will generate new dollars that we can spend, and we'll be able to do those kind of things. So, but again, we have to be driven by decisions by the legislature. And then of course we have to go through our regions and everything too, but we're hopeful we're going to see that. Now, I will say that one of the things that Damon has been working on that we've been talking about is a compensation review overall, just to sort of some of the things he talked about, like where are we and where do we have gaps and other things that we need to be matching so that we meet the market. So that's going to be moving forward irregardless of what the legislature does. But to really fully fund larger compensation growth across the organization, we're going to see what the legislature allows us to do.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, the next question we have is, this question is for Barbara. Does finalizing organizational structure in August, 15 days left, not late, include org structures for all the college, division, department units, or just the higher division of Marcom level?
That's a great question, and it will include from top down. We have a full comprehensive org chart that we are are charged with implementing. If this question is coming from someone in who will be centralized into the Division of Marketing and Communications,
Mhm.
we understand, we have been through some change, but we are scheduling, it's a messaging went out on Friday, to have a town hall type session with our new staff coming in. So it's clearly communicated how we will be structured going forward. But that is just in the coming weeks, knowing that we are up against September 1st very soon. But yes, the intention is to have a full org chart. Perhaps it can't fit all on one slide, but I have that separated by units.
Okay, thank you. Okay, our next question. As these changes are finalized and implemented, how do you plan to make sure diverse and historically marginalized faculty, staff, students, etc., are heard, supported, and involved in the decision-making process?
I think I'll take a first shot at that. Other folks may want to add too. We try to make sure in the implementation process up to this point that we try to be as inclusive as possible. So lots of input. There was a strategic implementation committee that had representation, frankly, from staff council and other groups as well too. And then the implementation teams, we had, I can't remember how many thousands of people requested to be on those teams. And there were several hundred people that were involved in the various implementation teams that put together the plans and the structures that we've talked about here today. So I think there's been pretty good broad representation up to this point. And then, like I said, on our process to review how well we're doing, there'll be broad representation of a committee to look at that. Other than that, I think we've got to rely on the different structures that we have throughout the university already to try to make sure that we have diverse interests paid attention to throughout all of this, whether it's the folks who focus on diversity for us and hold us accountable to that, or it's all the various organizations that exist that we meet with now on a regular basis to talk about this. So I think it's just important for us to be talking to people, reaching out, recognize that diversity is something that Dr. Banks takes very seriously, and we've got to continue to improve. We've got lots of areas for improvement in that. It's something we're working on, but I think there's infrastructures in place to continue to do that. And again, we need to be as transparent as possible on how well we're doing that as we report back on this implementation.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is, are there plans to address staff turnover and improve staff retention?
I can speak to a lot of the things that we have mentioned previously and today, looking at alternate work locations as a mean whereby we can be responsive to those needs that we've been hearing over the last year or more. Also understanding that we're in a job market that we've not experienced at any time in recent history, such that folks are expecting a different type of role and responsibility, and just working for Texas A&M because it's a secure place to work isn't what is getting folks coming to the door anymore. So we're trying to address those efforts by looking more at a talent acquisition process where we can go out and find individuals that are highly skilled, relevant, and want to be part of the Aggie community. And even though they may not be Aggies, they may like 108-degree temperatures in July and August and just want to be here in Bryan College Station. That was a joke, but anyway, but also what we've not done a good job of is remaining relevant with the markets. And so we've had a focused effort with our classification compensation team to not just look at how we can put people within the current existing structure, but how do we continue to progress and grow and remain relevant in today's new job market? How can we forecast a message that may not just be based on pay, but what's the total compensation package? What are the benefits? What are some of the things that we can help advocate for what makes Texas A&M University and an employee of that institution special? And those are the things that where our groups, through living well, through engagement, through these other types of initiatives that we're forming to ensure that we're putting our best foot forward and we're telling the right message to attract people to come and those same people to stay.
I would also add to it, in addition to compensation, benefits, remote work, the kind of things that you normally think of that are really important, and all the things Damon just talked about, Also think this overall approach to try to make the organization a little more simplistic, a little more accountable, those kind of things. You know, nothing's worse to have a job than every time you try to get a contract approved, it takes forever and you can't get things done. Or you think you have the authority to approve things and it turns out 3 other people have the same authority or whatever, and those kind of duplications. That sort of frustration, you can get paid well and still get really frustrated and decide to move on when you have those kind of inefficiencies and other crazy things. So I think we've got to deal with specific compensation, sort of the employment, traditional employment things. I think the remote work gives us a really great new tool to attract people, but you also have to have a great place to work. And A&M is a great university, but at times maybe it hasn't always been the best place to work. We got to smooth the organization so people feel like they have the ability to do things, they have authority when they think they do, they can make things happen, and they're excited about what they're responsible, because we all want to achieve the mission of this university. And so if the bureaucracy is stopping us from doing that, that frustrates people sometimes as much as bad pay or bad benefits.
Great.
And I would add to that, speaking on behalf of the IT organization, not having career paths, having to, you get to a certain, if you're part of a small IT group, you get to a certain point and you're stagnant from there on technically, right? You're not able to go after the latest and greatest technology. As part of this, we're going to have a career path that lets people push the envelope and be able to go after that. I've always wanted to learn cloud. Well, my previous little small group I was in didn't do anything in the cloud. I want to go get into a group that does. Having that career path, being able to show people you don't have to leave A&M to make technical advances in your career is really important. And having a big enough organization that you can have a technical career path or a management career path. A lot of our folks got locked into a management career path because it was the only avenue to promotion. Building a technical career path is huge.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it's you know, when we talk about the centralization, I think that just opens up a lot of doors for at least on the finance side for sure, but also the other groups, and gives them that avenue that maybe if they were the only finance person in an academic unit or something like that, they may have felt like they were, you know, kind of maxed out with what they can do within that group. And hopefully this opens up whole new avenues to our employees across campus that they can make a career. I mentioned that in my comments. And so I think there's a lot of possibility with this.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're down to our final question. And when we finish, I have a few brief comments, and then Greg, if you have any yourself. So the final question we're going to get to today, once again, we will get to all of your questions. We'll just do those offline. So when do each of you feel that staff in your areas will be settled into their final roles as determined by the restructure?
And I'll start. You know, I think I really see when we get to September 1st, I don't see that as the end. I really see that as kind of the starting point where the centralization opens up opportunities for us to do these things like getting alignment or processes, getting structures in place. You know, the structure we have in place on September 1, it's going to change probably over time. And I think it's important that we do that in order to become more efficient, to be able to, you know, provide the highest services to our units that we support. And, you know, I've been telling all of my folks that, you know, getting this new centralized org chart in place is really just the beginning. It kind of kicks us off. And it opens up the doors to do many other things and to support the university.
I would echo that same sentiment. That is a kickoff for us. I mean, if all goes well, I would think we'd be settled out in 6 months, but it could take a little longer.
Yeah, I think we'll continue to build through the fall, filling vacancies and identifying the next initiatives whereby we can make an impact across the university. I feel that we'll be well on our way by January. such that we'll have common training paths, we'll have common means whereby we can be responsive and we can leverage technology to address a lot of the things that we will need to propel us to the next level of service.
Yeah, I quite frankly hope we're not ever going to get to that static level again. I'm hoping we stay dynamic.
Yeah.
And someone comes to me in 6 months or a year and says, I've had this great idea. I need to get 3 people and go tackle this wonderful new piece of technology that John can use or marketing can use. And I go, great, we're going to spin you off as your own research group and go figure out if this works. We want folks to think about themselves and the organization in a new way. How do we take advantage of the incredible knowledge that's in this organization for change, right? It ought to be something we chase on a regular basis. And sometimes it'll be change that works, and sometimes it'll be change we try and we fail fast and we go on to the next platform.
Yeah.
But man, yeah, I'm hoping we stay very dynamic.
Yeah, much like everyone else, we have the same plan. Yes, much like we were asked, we will have an org chart on September 1st, but we have to remain fluid in order to truly centralize. And that's really this is an incredible opportunity to centralize, because it does feed into things like retention, allowing staff to focus on areas that they excel at, and that also helps the university. So we will be in a phased approach. I spoke about web being a major priority, our editorial, news staff, and you can think of the others that we have, like video, photography, social media, graphic designers. Each of those will be part of it. Doesn't mean they only can go one at a time, but we'll roll out our phased approach very soon.
All right. Well, thank you. So Greg Hartman, do you have any final comments you would like to make?
Well, the last thing, one, thank you again for this opportunity. This is the beginning of us trying to get out and talk to a lot of folks, and nothing better than talking to the staff council, something like this. And Cindy, you've been a great help throughout this entire process, serving on the implementation committee and those kind of things too. And thanks to all my colleagues too. I think it's clear there's an awful lot of work going on. There's a lot of collaboration. There's a lot of difficult things to do. We're going to make some mistakes, but we're also going to have a much better university when this is all over with, I think. And again, it's going to allow us, when you hear Dr. Banks's vision for the future in her state of the university, if we don't have this kind of strong foundation, we're not going to be able to achieve the really big vision and high heights that she has in store for all of us. So I think this was an important first step. It was a challenging, difficult first step. Folks have been great. It's been challenging, turbulent for folks, but I think it's good. And I would say, again, I said this earlier too, if there's any subgroups out there among the folks who are listening today, we're looking for opportunities to talk to people, whether it's just one of us going out to do a shorter version, all of us doing a longer version, whatever it is. It's all about transparency. It's all about communication. So thank you for giving us this opportunity. We hope you can help us find some others.
Thank you. Thank you all very, very much. So I have just 2 announcements. Before I do, I want to remind everyone of the Staff Council's website. That's staff.tanu.edu. You can also email us for any inquiries, comments, whatever you like. Keep it clean, please. And that is staff@tanu.edu. So we try to keep it very simple. So once again, I want to encourage all of you to join us on our fundraiser. That is August the 25th. It's in partnership with Double Dave's at 1410 Texas Avenue in College Station from 5 to 9 p.m. Be sure to let them know that you are part of the University Staff Council fundraiser. Finally, this is actually my last official program with USC as your chair. It has been my pleasure and my honor to serve this past year. I'm so excited to announce that Sarah Franke, who has been our vice chair this past year, who has been handling all of the details behind the scenes today, she will be your incoming chair as of September 1. So please join me in just being a great staff member for the university and supporting her and the council in everything that they need. So thank you once again. We will get the answers to all of your questions to you, as well as a link to this session today to share with those who were unable to join us. So thank you again, everyone. Go to the grocery store today. You won't be able to go this weekend, and stay safe. Bye now.